So when we discuss about the bilateral relations, economic relations especially, my personal feeling is that we are trying to avoid tougher tensions between these two economies.
Looking at the bilateral relationship, sure. I think if this administration is committed to tariffs, as it talked about often on the campaign trail, that's going to be a very rough go.
We have a new equipment show in Zhuhai. In there, China proves the rising of the new powers and new capacities. Based on China's defensive national security strategies, such kind of rising of power and capacities will providing strategic stabilities to this bilateral relationship.
Welcome everyone to Global Times Roundtable on China-US ties. As the dust settles from the US election and former President Donald Trump makes his comeback, what do you think lies ahead for China-US relations over the next 4 years?
So when we discuss about the bilateral relations, economic relations especially, my personal feeling is that we are trying to avoid tougher tensions between these two economies. Both of our two economies are facing many challenges. I have to say that the situation nowadays in the United States is not as good as when Donald Trump left the White House 4 years ago. The inflation became a very important issues to affect the people's life. I think that is not good thing that if these two countries are separated too long and the people are having a very wrong impression on the other side, and it is not so good to continue to contain the investment and trade and make more barriers on that, because that will definitely break the market apart.
I agree with Professor Zhou that one of the biggest concerns that the U.S. has to consider, no matter what it does with China, is that the economic situation here at home is struggling. Inflation has remained persistent. There are, especially people in their 20s and 30s, there is real concern and legitimate concern. Looking at the bilateral relationship, sure. I think if this administration is committed to tariffs, as it talked about often on the campaign trail, that's going to be a very rough go. And what I don't think this administration either wants to hear or simply does not want to admit is that while tariffs sound like good policy, they hurt the U.S. economy more than they hurt China or any other country in which tariffs are used.
Sino-US relationships is a mutual or bilateral constructed relationships, which means both United States and China has their capacities to shape and form and ensure the development of these bilateral relationships. In these days, comparing to 80 years ago, China's power and capacities already grown a lot, even though in the future 4 years, we have rising uncertainty elements rising from the United States. I think China, the top leaders, will have enough confidence, power, capabilities to ensure that these bilateral relationships can finally and de facto development in a more healthier and a more stable tracks, even though during sometimes we will have some turmoils, sometimes we still have some uncertainties and surprising, but generally we can deal with it.
The Chinese side has reiterated its hope that the China and the US will, in principle of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation, find a right way to get along with each other. What message do you think China has been sending?
Our policy and the strategies or the guiding principles toward the United States and dealing with Sino-US bilateral relationship is coherent. It means we will not change our policies. We will not change our strategies only because you have a new president in the United States.
I am a big believer in the saying that an open hand beats a closed fist. And what I mean by that is an open hand suggests friendship. An open hand suggests optimism. An open hand says, look, we have opportunities here to benefit both sides, not just one side. And so I think what we've seen from this message from China is a very clear statement of an open hand. Let's find ways to cooperate. Let's find areas where, even if that means we have to compromise a little bit, let's do that. But let's not look at this. And and this is one of the frustrations that I have an American, is far too much over the last 8 years or so. The message about the U.S. and China has been, unless we, the Americans, win, or they, the Chinese, lose, then it's bad policy. Well, you can't conduct international relations on such simplicity. Everything is far more complex than that. So my hope is that the open hand that has been sent by the president and the foreign ministry will be received by the soon-to-be president here in the U.S. with an equal open hand and with optimism.